Thank you so much. I'm also happy and appreciate you sparing time, maybe to come and join me this afternoon. So maybe if I just ask you briefly, if you can be able, maybe I know you've introduced yourself. I did know you. If you can just be able to introduce yourself, give us some brief overview of your maybe profession, your expertise, what you're doing, and maybe where you're doing it, so that as we continue with this conversation, our viewers will be able to know how well or how best they can be able to address you.
Okay, right now I'm speaking from Kigali, but of course, with the setting of what we call the global market, we do work in different areas remotely. So basically, you may find that my work extends beyond the borders of where I am. So that's why I say I'm a consultant. I'm a regional consultant. So basically, there are a number of areas in which we intervene as experts of public international law and of course experts of regional integration and economic cooperation in Africa, and particularly with the buyers of the East African community. Thank you.
I get you. Can you be able to hear me from that end?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, that's great. That's great, Wakili. I know one of the things that I want to discuss. I just want to play a short video. Then from that, I know we are going to proceed because it is going to inform some of the questions that we want to learn from you. And this kind of discussion was initiated by the former Prime Minister of Kenya, His Excellency Raila Odinga, declaring or showing his interest in contesting for the AU Commission chairmanship. So I just want to play that video shortly. Then after that, I know we'll proceed from then. We'll be able to get to know more from you, being that you're an expert in this, you've interacted with these offices, and you know a lot that we people don't know that happens behind the scenes. So that when I'll be engaging you, I know I'll be engaging you at an expert level, as somebody with know-how of what is happening in these regional or these organizations that integrate the regions within Africa.
Opposition leader Raila Odinga has officially announced his intention to contest for the chairmanship of the African Union Commission. The former Prime Minister says he has consulted widely before deciding to throw his hat in the ring to succeed the outgoing African Union chairperson, Musa Faki Mahamat. And as Brenda Wanga reports, Raila's bid immediately got the endorsement of African statesman and former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo.
Flanked by retired Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, Azimio leader Raila Odinga put to rest speculation about his move to continental politics.
Should the leadership of Africa want my services, I am ready and offer myself to be of service to this continent.
Odinga says the move to seek the Commission's top leadership is driven by his desire to bring social and economic change in the continent that continues to lag behind despite being rich in both natural and human resources. His announcement getting the nod from former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo.
A person, man or woman, who has experience, who understand the situation we are in, who comes from a background that can make a difference.
Raila is seeking to succeed outgoing chairman Musa Faki Mahamat, who is serving the last year of his tenure. Anyone elected as the chairman of the African Union Commission also serves as its CEO, legal representative, and its chief accounting officer. The holder of the office serves for a 4-year term, renewable once, meaning if Raila gets the position, he could serve for a maximum of 8 years, during which time he will be prohibited from participating in local politics. Raila says he is aware of this requirement and is ready to oblige if elected.
This
means that I'll be working for Africa in the period that I'll be in the office.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And our viewers, welcome to this conversation. I'm hosting Wakili Abuya Kennedy, and today we are simply looking at the AU bid and the possibility of Kenya being the first East African country to have their representative head this prestigious African position. So Kennedy, the question that I'm just going to ask you, that every Kenyan is asking, what is AU? Maybe if you can just brief us some brief background of AU. What is AU? Who are the members? What does it do? Because some of us, we just hear them say Raila is going to be AU chair, but they don't know what AU is. So maybe if you can assist us understand what AU is.
All right, thank you. So basically, understanding the AU is more of history. It doesn't have much to do with law, but again, maybe to refresh this discussion, AU, we can trace it from 1963 when the Organization of African Union was formed. And the reason why the African states came together during that particular time was first to fight a common enemy, and that was the colonization that was actually coming towards the end. And therefore, they needed that force whereby there are certain states where those colonizers could not live immediately. And so they said, once we combine together, we can put up, same policies, same approaches, resources, and of course, share thoughts on how to liberate our people. So that came all the way up to 1999 when things changed, because we have a lot of, dynamism, especially both in political and social spheres. So they realized that, Africans still realized that now it's no more about fighting colonization, because the last one that was a thorn in the flesh, or the elephant in the room, was the apartheid of the South Africa. So once the apartheid ended, and then now they had to regroup and say, fine, we need to redefine our goals within the organization. So one of the ideas was to revamp its name, and not now Organization of African Union or states, whatever, but now onto African Union. And that discussion was started in 1999, and then things were put together, and then eventually in 2000 they signed what we call the Constitutive Act of the African Union, which now is more of the law, quote unquote, that now established the current AU. So the current AU basically narrowed down, and therefore the main aims that now they are pushing, or which the organization pushes, is to strengthen cooperation amongst the African member states, integration in different spheres, political, economic, and now we can see they have even evolved into defense, diplomacy, and so forth. So that is the essence of the AU. And therefore, why is it important? Of course, I've mentioned those spheres, but again, we are Africans, and there are certain proverbs that we do use every moment that, just one hand may not, be strong. When they are joined together, then you are able to pull, a bigger strength. So then that is the essence. So when African states come together, they find, themselves at a position to decide on certain matters, especially in the global arena, as opposed to pushing for the same agenda when they are, one or two or three. So I think that would maybe summarize for the time being what the AU stands for and its historical perspectives.
Thank you. I get you clearly. AU is in charge of the political affairs in Africa, economic affairs, and now it's also dealing with the things to do with defense. So that one, does it mean that like we are having some countries in Africa, they are having wars or they are having chaos? So does AU have an army that maybe they can be able to send in these specific areas to go and ensure that the peace prevail, or they just use the army from the member states?
When they did the Constitutive Act of 2000, I think 3 years after, they actually came up with an amendment. One of the striking features in that protocol that amends the Constitutive Act of the AU is that they provided a clause that the AU has the power to intervene in any state if any case it is determined that there is perpetration of genocide, war crimes, among other atrocities. Now, within the framework of that, they also came up with what we call the Peace and Security Council. Of course, we are going to talk about the structures of the AU. Now, the Peace and Security segment of the AU is actually in charge of ensuring that they come up with those particular treaties and the protocols to ensure that the AU is able to, manage peace and security within or amongst its members. Of course, there's to implement that, there's what we call the African Standby Force, which is established. Each member state contributes to it in terms of personnel, in terms of resources, and this is the one that now AU uses when it comes to things like peacekeeping, things like trying to maybe facilitate discussions amongst those member states that are not in maybe in good terms. But even internally, we have seen them. But again, of course, there are also challenges within that context, because we have not seen AU actually intervening per se. They apply what we call the soft approach. So we have not seen a situation where now they apply the hard approach. And you are aware that also within the same framework, AU has also stood very strongly in condemning especially undemocratic takeover of power. I don't want to mention the states, but in the western part of Africa, you've seen them even suspending some members for not basically demonstrating some democratic ideals or subjecting their citizens to certain atrocities or maybe oppressions and so forth. So we have seen them doing that. But again, these things develop with time. The future is okay, and we believe that the moment AU will continue to strengthen its institutions, and of course with these kind of new developments like leadership that we are going to talk about, then we can say that in future we will feel it more than what we are feeling right now.
That's great. That's really great, and that's wonderful. And it seemed because from the brief that you gave us, this union had to change and even change the name to align with maybe the needs that are currently affecting the member states. So there's one question that people will be interested in knowing. We are talking of the AU, the African Union, and just from the video that we played, Raila showed some interest that he's going to avail himself for the position of the AU Commission Chair. So there are these things that come into play. When we talk of the African Union Chair, we are having this AU Commission. Can you just make us understand the difference? Because we normally know that there is somebody who is called an AU Chair, who is who must be a sitting president of a member state, and I think this is elected after a period of 1 year. You know better, you'll be able to maybe expound on it. So can you just make us understand the difference that is there between AU Chair and AUC and any other leadership organs that are within the AU?
Thank you. Now, before we go into maybe the structures within the AU, I've seen also from the mainstream media, that confusion, particularly online, whereby the distinction between the AU and the AU Commission. And maybe now let me also introduce that we also have the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which is also a commission with its own chairperson. So we have two commissions, and then we have three chairs now, including the African Union Chair. So the African Union Chair is the leader of all the heads of states that is appointed for a period of 1 year, and currently is held by the president of Mauritania. So that is the AU Chair. It is legally, it is more of a ceremonial position, but it has significance in terms of spearheading what AU needs to do here and there. Then we have the African Union Commission, which is the secretariat, or what we call the implementing organ of the African Union. I will come back to it. Then we have the commissions which is in charge of the human rights, which I talked about, which now sits in Banjul in the Gambia. And the chair currently is a professor from Congo, DRC. And so these ones are three different titles, and they serve different purposes within the AU framework. Now, if you look at the one for the human rights, it has nothing to do with the Constitutive Act, which I talked about, the one which forms the AU. That one emanates from the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which was signed in 1981. It was signed in Nairobi, but it was named after Banjul, which is in the Gambia, for the purpose that the president of Gambia at that time brokered a deal that made it possible for the African states to sign that particular charter. Because at that during that period of time, you know, there were so many challenges, especially within the EAC. The leadership of the likes of Idi Amin had created difficulties to their own people. So there were a lot of human rights violations within the African state. We have the Bokassa of the Central African Republic. And now these guys also had big support. So there was no way they could actually accept anything to sign in terms of human rights. They were looking at it as people trying to, you know, cut their powers, and therefore they are not able to control, because they were using control by fear, which was against the norms of the human rights. Okay, that is aside. Now let us come and look at the AU structures. Now, the highest organ within the AU is the assembly of the AU. And here is made up of the presidents or heads of the government, or we call them heads of state or heads of the government of respective member countries. The difference between the heads of state and the heads of the government is a constitutional matter. It depends on the way a country has formed itself. For example, you realize that in certain states, we have presidents who are just ceremonial, as I've mentioned, but now at the level of the country, or not at the continental level. Let's take an example of Ethiopia. The head of government is the legal representative.
They have the prime minister, right?
Yes, exactly, which is the prime minister. And therefore, the head of state is not the legal representative of that particular country. So that is why they use the term the representatives of heads of state or heads of the government. Then the second organ is the Executive Council, which I think we should be much familiar with that, because the other time when the Kenyan Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, went to Ethiopia. So that meeting that involves all the foreign affairs ministers from partner states, or any other minister that may be designated by a partner state. Now that is the second organ. Their function, the function of the first one is policy making. Just like we have a company, we have an organization, the board, or you talk about, the directors or something like that. So it is an equivalent of the same for the assembly of the AU. But now, when it comes to the Executive Council, the technocrats bind the assembly, bind these heads of states. Why? Because they are the ones who actually identify those areas of integration. They identify those areas of cooperation that Africa or AU needs to focus on. So they are actually the ones that carry the diaries of the African states, and therefore they are very powerful in terms of even election of the other commissioners, apart from the chairperson and the deputy. So the Executive Council actually participate in the election. They are the ones who elect the other commissioners, which we are going to talk about, except for the two.
Actually, of course, we will look into that, because we are going to see how these elections actually happen. So just proceed.
So then we have the third organ, which is the Pan-African Parliament. Initially, it was sitting in Ethiopia, but it was moved to South Africa. We should also be much familiar with this, because was it last year or somewhere, we got some very interesting news from South Africa, whereby they were not able to agree on one thing or the other. And then in Pan-African Parliament, each partner state appoints around 4 or 5 members to represent. In Kenya, we have Honorable Mugatana. We have like the same number who are now representing Kenya, and its role basically is to do the oversight. The same way we have our national parliament function is the same way it functions, to do the oversight, to make sure that it represents the interest of partner states or interest of member states, as well as the interest of Africa. And then we have now the fourth one, which is the topic of our discussion today, the AU.
Before you even proceed to that, just allow me, sorry to interrupt you. You've said
Yes.
something so interesting about the Pan-African Parliament, which I think we can liken it to the EALA, the East African Legislative Council. Is that all right?
No, we call it the East African Legislative Assembly, EALA.
Yeah. So, like, unlike when it comes to the East African Legislative Assembly, we normally have a certain procedure of getting the members who are going to represent us, whereby the political parties, after every election, will always have to nominate some members, and they get elected through the parliament, like what we saw after the 2022 general election. What about this Pan-African Parliament? How do the countries or member states draw their members who are going to represent them in this parliament? How is it done? Is it the heads of state choosing, or there is a certain specific way that is used to get these members?
A good question. Now, let's begin from the EALA, from the East African Legislative Assembly. The manner in which they are appointed is actually engraved within the East African Treaty. So normally, when we have an organ of any of these arrangements, the manner in which they are established, the manner in which the function is provided for within those instruments that establish them. So that is why within the EAC Treaty, you find that it provides that one of the conditions is provides that it must be a representation because we call it representative democracy. So within the EAC, it recognizes that principle so much. And that is why, if you look at what we call a Nyang' Nyong'o case within the East African Court of Justice, a very interesting one, whereby the Nyang' Nyong'o challenged the rules, the initial rules that the Kenyan government applied, where they could not subject these people to a rigorous process of ensuring that representation, whereby the parliament could act, because it is construed that the parliament is actually the face of all Kenyans. So if Kenyans are not able to participate in appointing the members to East African Legislative Assembly, the way we have in the European Union, actually the citizens, the populations do that, but in our structure we don't. So that delegated function should be exercised by the parliament. So the parliament must vote and appoint them on our behalf. So Nyang' Nyong'o actually challenged the previous rules, whereby the Kenyan government wanted just to handpick. So you can see, so the EAC has created that to make sure that whoever goes to the East African Legislative Assembly is a representation of the people and not a representation of governments. Now, when it comes to the AU, the Pan-African Parliament, which is created also by the Constitutive Act, the one Constitutive Act of 2000, the one I've talked about, and it's also provide the manner in which. Now, if you look at the provisions that that highlight the establishment of the Pan-African Parliament, actually very short. It doesn't give anything more than each member state shall appoint, blah, 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 this number. And then it says that appointment will ensure that it takes care of gender. So that is what it gives strength. And then at the same time, it makes sure that it's a representation of the interest of that particular member state. So you find that now the member state has a lot of leeway to choose in the manner. So they can choose to follow the procedures of the one we have at East African Legislative Assembly appointments, nominations, or it can choose to just, pick the ones that are existing. And let me give you an example of Kenya. Kenya, what they have chosen is that they will be amongst the appointed. We have bicameral parliament in Kenya. We have the National Assembly, and then we have the Senate. So what Kenya has done is that it picks amongst both from the National Assembly, amongst the ones who are already serving as the members of parliament, from the National Assembly or from the Senate, and that is what represents them. Someone might ask why. Yes, it makes sense resource-wise, because if, let's say, maybe they appoint someone, like the way we do in the East African Legislative Assembly, they will be like, okay, creating other channels, which may be checks and balances and all that. And those roles, if they are not well defined within our national legal framework, it can also create a clash between who should do what in terms of representation of our interests at the AU level. So I think linking the Pan-Africa to the Kenyan Parliament, for me, I don't find any challenge. It is well because, again, those matters that are pinching, those matters of regional or continental interest can still go down into our national assemblies directly without someone within the standing orders of the parliament, without a stranger. Because if you are not a member of parliament and you are there, so they will refer without a stranger, making such reports. So if it is one of their own who's representing our interests, that seamless transition or that seamless communication between between the Continental National Assembly, National Parliament, I think is so good. So I hope that answers your question.
That's really great. That's really great. Let me see from the comment section there. I can see Goodyear, welcome. Caleb Ndolo is saying that the session is so informative. There is one Mary Masioko learning from Machakos. Tell us possibility of Baba getting there, please. Of course, Mary, that is what we are going to do, and that is why we are here. We are going to see if Raila will be able to represent the dream of Eastern Africa, because Eastern Africa, as far as I understand, have not got an opportunity to hold that position. And as it has been explained, yes, I think we've had the position of the AU chair, but we've not gotten the AU Commission chair. I think that has been clarified. Esther is asking a question: why do politicians choose their failed friends to East African Legislative Assembly? Don't we have rules to stop that? I think maybe in relation to how these guys are normally gotten there. Majority, most of them are people who maybe after the successive elections, they didn't find themselves getting elected. So these political parties normally reward them. And does it mean that it is, according to Kenyan law, it is only the political parties that can propose members, or anybody, any individual can just get out and you apply for this position, then you subject yourself to be elected by parliament? I'll also help Esther asking that, if maybe. Is it a must that the political parties are the ones who propose members who are joining the East African Legislative Assembly, or even individual or independent Kenyans can make an application to be considered for this kind of election?
Very good question. Now, first of all, it's not the Kenyan law that determines that procedure. The procedure is engraved within the EAC treaty. So what the Kenyan law does is just to give effect to the provisions of the EAC treaty that define how and the manner in which a member of the East African Legislative Assembly should be appointed from each partner state. Now, what I said is that, we are practicing what we call representative democracy. We are not direct in some instances. And what the treaty talks about is that the appointment must ensure that it represents the political interests across the board. We had a very good discussions when the Kenyan Constitution was the 2010 Constitution was passed, and of course we were asking. Of course, the discussion was not at that point of the 2010 Constitution, but the discussion was this recently. So we were looking at it whereby we allow the independent candidates. So if you look at the EAC, the texts of the EAC treaty, it talks about the political representations, and actually talks about representation of political parties. Because at that point, because EAC treaty was also apparently coincidentally, it was also enacted in 1999, the same time when these guys were discussing the transition between OAU and AU. So now, if it talks about the political parties, what is the intention? Yeah, the spirit, when we're interpreting the Constitution, even during those cases, the spirit of the law. So the spirit of the EAC treaty at that particular point was that if all the political parties are represented, especially the ones that have a higher stake in that particular country, because in Kenya we have over 50 political parties, so it is impractical for those slots to be given to the over 50. So let's say the first 4 strongest political parties, so they come up with a formula. Now within that, it means that we are not anywhere to now start, voting across that line. So because we have delegated our authority, we have delegated our democratic rights through the members of parliament, through the National Assembly, and through the Senate. So when now they are appointing or they are nominating these people, they nominate, let's say, a political party A, I don't want to mention their names, nominates 3 people. Political party B nominates 3 people. Political party C nominates these people. Now, at that stage also, it depends on the strength of the nominee. Is that person capable of, persuading those members of the political party? Because some political party, when they know they have 1 slot, they will only give 1 slot. And then now let's assume that they have given 2, 2, 2, 2. It goes to the parliament. Parliament must vote for these 2. So there's a lot of lobbying. So that's why you see, you just mentioned political rewards and all that. So it all depends on the strength of that political party within the National Assembly, within the Senate. And then eventually, the one who wins takes the day. And so they don't vote like, everybody that sends their interest or whatever, but they vote on those names that have been suggested by those political parties. Now, the discussion about the independent candidates, because in that context, I would also construe an independent candidate or independent candidacy as also a political party in quote. So because you might find that independent candidates, they have more following than even a person who died in a political party. Let's look at even at the constituency level or even at the county level. So this assumption, of course it is, but looking at that procedure, it's assumed that by virtue of these people being appointed by the political parties, it also takes interest of even those other people who were on those independent tickets and so forth. And about why political failures, political process is about populist agenda. So normally you will not find someone from Lokichogio who is just busy herding cattle, or someone from Nyalgunga or someone from Lamu. So they must also, appreciate their own colleagues. So then you find now you can find an extra is where now the requirement for youth representation and requirement for gender and requirement for persons with disabilities. So if they don't find amongst themselves, then they can go out and say, now who's now, will be able to represent. So that is basically how it happens at the level of the EALA. I think with the Pan-African Parliament, I think I had explained that. And maybe going down to the structures of the AU again, if there are other questions, you maybe bring them afterwards. Now we have the commission, now African Union Commission, whereby now the discussion will evolve around. The African Union Commission, initially, there were 10. But in 2016, the AU initiated what we call a reform agenda, a reform process, whereby the president of Rwanda, His Excellency Kagame, Paul Kagame, actually was appointed to chair that task force. And it, amongst other things, it recommended reduction or the alignment of the institutions of the AU. And the commission was one of them that was realigned. So they were reduced from 10 to 8. So as we talk today, we have the chair, deputy chair, and then we have 6 other commissioners. Now, within this commission, the chair and the deputy chair of the AU commission, not of the AU, is appointed by the assembly of the AU. While these other 6 commissioners are appointed, are elected by the executive council that I talked about, the foreign affairs ministers from the member states. And they sit, it's a procedure that also those reforms recommended that the procedures for appointment of the members of the commission is on merit. Some of the guiding principle is merit. Secondly, regional representation. Third, gender. And fourth any other interest that AU may have for that purpose. So now these 6, we don't talk about them because the process actually, if you look at also in the reform they recommended, the reforms came out in 2018. So it took 2016, 2017, then 2018, the reforms came out when they were published. And also they recommended that when they are being recruited, the 6, which we believe the process might be going, you can see AU website if they've announced. So the 6 undergo rigorous interviews, rigorous, the same way you apply for a job. And then now there will be a consultancy firm that will be also put in on board to also assess the different skill sets that they require. So that is the 6. Now these 2, the very interesting one, where now former Prime Minister Raila Amolo is interested in, and now at the doorstep of the AU Assembly. And why is it so? It is so because it's like you are appointing or you are nominating or you are electing the CEO of a company. So literally speaking, the African Union Commission chairperson is the chief executive officer of Africa. In fact, amongst the mandates that they do, okay, the title chief executive, so let's put it there. Then it's also the legal representative of Africa. So let's say that if Africa wants to enter into certain agreements with other regional blocs like the AU, like the CARICOM in Caribbean, like the Americas, like the Asian. So he is the one who will be able to append that signature. Secondly, that is between Africa and another bloc. Secondly, is also the one in charge of budget. Is budgeting, programs, coming up with programs, is the one that implements all the projects. For example, now we have these projects, which is called the Africa We Want, the Agenda 2063. So they are the ones who actually make sure that these things are implemented. So this position is very, very, very critical for the continent. It is very, very critical. It's a very, very powerful one. And of course, the rest, maybe I will get the question from you. And that is why you see the recruitment process.
I just have one question on that, because you'll find that some of the positions over there, we are having the heads of state. When it comes to this CEO, just a question. This person, is it a must that they are not representatives of these member states? Like they are not president, they are not prime ministers, they are people who are outside the active government.
A good question. I want to link it to our Kenyan constitution. Of course, it's violated. In the constitution of Kenya, when you are a civil servant, you are not supposed to go into politics. You must remain and steer a path between you and politics. So the same principle applies at the AU level. You talk about the heads of states and the heads of government of the member states that forms the highest organ. That's a political formation. You talk of course, the executive council. They are technocrats, but you can see some political laces when you look at the way they are, because they are creatures of political figures from those partner states. And then now we also have what we call the permanent representatives, what we call the ambassadors. So let's say all the partner states who send their ambassadors to Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, where the AU sits, is actually doubling up as permanent representative. It's also an organ. And their work is also to help the executive council. So within that, you can see there's a lot of political connection between the AU Assembly, the executive council, the permanent representatives or the ambassadors. You can see that political. So that is why the secretariat must steer off from that political aspect, so that they are able to perform in the capacity of quote unquote civil servants that we have in our context within the country level. You understand? So that is the reason why they are not supposed to. Of course, one of the steps for you even to be your application to be accepted is that you must be fronted by your member state, and that is basically because the respect for sovereignty. If a member state is the one that his interest is there, therefore they cannot purport to just allow anybody, even people, from wherever to just. So the member states still play a role. However, the moment that person has been, the name of that person or application of that person has been submitted, this person now undergoes very rigorous checks, very rigorous procedures. And also in 2018, they introduced, which you are going to see, they also introduced debate. And I believe the former prime minister will also be able to participate. And I can maybe refer the previous one when Musa Faki, Honorable Musa Faki, the current chair of the African Union Commission, was being reassessed for re-election. It was done by Uduaka Amimo, our very own Kenyan. That's very interesting. So now that former prime minister is going to be there in the hot seat, maybe another journalist from some area. So you will see that happening a lot because they're checking. And that's why you see they also introduced the academic requirements that they must meet certain levels of academic.
Actually, that is where I was going, because when Raila declared his candidacy, we saw so many controversies, so many controversial stories claiming that, you see, Raila is not qualified. We saw a certain qualification sheet being circulated, talking of the kind of the degrees, the kind of the courses that are needed. And there are people who say that, you see, Raila doesn't have a non-degree, so he's not qualified. And just to quote some of them, they said in Kenya, nobody can ask Raila, where is your academic qualification, and such kind of things. But if we look at some of the developments that have happened, even we saw the Minister of Foreign Affairs, that is Musalia Mudavadi, having the meeting that you just described well in Addis Ababa, and giving a green light that Raila's way is now getting clear and clearer. So what are some of the qualifications? Without looking into Raila as an individual, what are some of the qualifications that are needed for you to be a chairman, the AU Commission?
First of all, of course, we have qualification categorized into different stages. We have qualification in terms of academic requirements, which requires degree. It states, law, political science, what, so not, and any other equivalent. So the people who say it is only law, it's only political science, no, any other equivalent, because at that point, degree is just but now a mark, a cutoff point, but it does not mean that you must have a degree in this particular area, in my own interpretation. The reason why I'm interpreting it this way is because those qualifications are not embedded within the Constitutive Act of the AU as such. This qualification actually came when now these reforms were being implemented. And that's where now they highlighted them. So with that, reforms, of course, they are very significant, but it does not have that very strict force of law to make sure that someone will be bad because it has violated. Because the only thing that cannot be violated in this instance is the act that establishes the AU. But these other ones are actually strategies to make sure that they bring the best man or the best woman for the job. That is one. Secondly, in terms of experience, it requires someone who has held some, I would call prime positions or highest political positions in those respective member states. And taking from even the current chair of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki, Honorable Musa Faki, he was also the former prime minister at one point, you see. So obviously you can see Raila fits. First of all, I believe Raila has a degree, and that's not a question, because you remember there was a point, or even within our constitution, where the requirements for that is very much there, and therefore Raila has contested for presidency since that promulgation of our constitution to date at that capacity with that qualification. So there is no doubt that he qualifies in terms of academic credentials, but also in terms of experience. You can see he has served at the highest levels, political levels, and that is being the former prime minister. And there's no doubt that in that context, he also qualifies. The other one is also, is this person capable of, can this person actually feel the vision of the continent? Is this person having the capacity, to bring together different interests of, member states from West, because Africa is in that, they divide Africa into different regions. Let's say from the West Africa, from the North Africa, from the Eastern Africa, from the Southern Africa. And there he qualifies too, because Raila is the immediate former high representative on infrastructure for the AU. So in that position, he transfers all these, and therefore he served it well. We did not hear there was any issues apart from now when he was replaced. And replacement is just but a very normal occurrence, because we don't serve in these positions forever. At one point, someone has to serve, another one has to come on board. And then the third one, this person must be, fourth one, this person must be fronted by a member state. And sincerely, the president, His Excellency William Ruto, is the one spearheading this project. So in those matrices, you can find Raila qualifies in all that level. So these people coming out that he doesn't qualify, probably they have their own reasons there too. But from where I sit, or from my analysis of those instruments, because I'm not only talking from the media, I'm talking while reflecting the instruments that are applicable and which are also going to be used to gauge whoever is going to contest for this position.
I really get that one carefully and keenly. And you mentioned you have to be felt in Africa. We've seen that before, even the day Raila declared his bid, he was accompanied by the former president of Nigeria, that is Obasanjo. Then after that, we saw Raila meeting one Jakaya Kikwete, after there were some speculations that Tanzania is planning to front Kikwete. Then later on, what now made people to see some seriousness in this thing, we saw Raila and the current president, William Ruto, visiting one Museveni. So you've described the process of voting. So what is the impact of meeting people like Obasanjo, Kikwete, and Museveni? Is it like the Kenyan politics, whereby you need to have a meeting with some kingpins and some queenpins so that you can be able to get or gain acceptance politically in those regions? What is the impact of meeting people like Obasanjo and Museveni?
First of all, we have not discussed about the process of voting. We just describe what are the requirements for a person to be accepted as an applicant. Maybe we'll do it briefly.
We'll move into that, okay.
Yes, there are so many interesting facts on that as well. But see, meeting these people is very, very important. But personally, meeting Obasanjo and looking at the history of AU is something that is a boost for Raila. Because for Honorable Raila, former Prime Minister. This is because when you look at the organs of the African Union, there's also what we call the Court of Justice of the African Union. Now, this court was combined with the African Court on Human and People's Rights, and to be one. And one of the persons who did that was Obasanjo when he was the chair of the AU. And Obasanjo did this because Obasanjo had realized that we are creating so many institutions that actually that was the first reforms. The 2018 is, I could say, is the second. And Obasanjo was very significant in that because he realized that when we create so many institutions that we are not able to support, they become ineffective. Now, since that time, Obasanjo, even when he left to be the chair of the AU at that particular point, Obasanjo has remained very influential within the AU corridors. And by the way, in the history of the chairperson, I think is one of them whose tenure was increased by 6 months. Remember when Gaddafi was the chair those days, and he wanted to vie for the second term because he said he wanted to push for the United Africa agenda. His counterparts rejected and tell him no, and there was a lot of backlash. But Obasanjo did not have any challenges insofar as his tenure being increased to 6 months. They might say they wanted to realign they wanted to realign the elections, of course, from July to January or February. But for me, I feel like they also felt like Obasanjo needed to do more. So even today is still one of these, at the national level, we call them statesmen. But at the continental level, I think is a continental figure. And meeting him was very important. And of course, these shuttle diplomacies that the former prime minister has been doing, they are also important. And what are the upshots, or what are the outcomes? As we talk now, there are only two candidates. That is the former Minister for Foreign Affairs, Somalian Minister for Foreign Affairs, the lady, and of course Raila. And if you look at the chart now, if you draw the chart, Raila has been endorsed by seven African states. And that is, I think, South Africa, which has come out. We have Rwanda, the president, His Excellency Paul Kagame, said he trusts the leadership of Raila. Museveni has endorsed him. DRC Congo. I mean, there are seven against none. I don't want to, maybe others, but we have not seen, those states coming out to support. So you can see from that number, and I think this should be even already recorded somewhere, the states that have come out to say they are supporting candidacy of Raila. Now,
and maybe as you talk of that, you've said this so far, there are only two candidates, that is Kenya fronting Honorable Raila Odinga, that's the Prime Minister, and Somalia fronting their former Foreign Affairs Minister, of which I don't think the government have spent a lot of time or a lot of energy in doing it, having been in the place. So do you mean that what we were told some weeks ago, that this moment is Eastern African moment, it is true that no country outside Eastern Africa is going to front a candidate?
Yes, this is true. That's the position that the Executive Council took, because I told you, Executive Council, they are the technocrats, so they make those decisions on behalf of the AU Assembly, and then the reason being, there was a stalemate on where do we now face. Are we facing north or we are facing east? And eventually they decided, let us face east, and that is why now it is Eastern region, not East Africa. Also, we need to make that difference. Eastern region, remember when we were studying geography?
Yeah. Actually, you need also to make us understand this. There is
Yes.
Eastern Africa, and
Yes.
there is Eastern region. There is this one that is having 11 countries, if I'm not wrong, and there is a region that now includes even is it the Rwanda and Burundi, or those ones are in the central, maybe?
No. When we talk about the East Africa is a formation. It is a block. It's a regional block. Currently, we are 8. We have the founders, that is Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Then it extended to Rwanda and Burundi, and then it extended to South Sudan, and then DRC Congo, and the latest entrance is Somalia. So those are 8. That is now when we talk about East Africa, because East Africa is a regional block. But when we talk about Eastern Africa, then we go back to the history that we studied those days in primary school, how we were drawing the maps. Now it includes Ethiopia, it includes Eritrea, Djibouti, yeah. So you find that the numbers are now, according to some of the reports, they are over 10 actually, almost 15 thereabout. Yeah. So that's what we talk about Eastern Africa. So someone might say, maybe if this thing would have happened before Somalia joined, let's say, the East African community, would the lady still qualify within the context of Eastern Africa? Yes. So it has nothing to do with the East African community. It is Eastern region of Africa. And of course, they agreed that way. And there, I think the subsequent one would be northern. So now, Eastern Africa also, it's not the first time given played a role in terms of deputy chair of the African Union Commission. I don't know whether we know this. A Kenyan called Honorable Ambassador Erastus Mwencha is the only, in the history of the AU, is the only deputy deputy chair of the African Union Commission, who has served for 2 terms from 2008 up to add 8 there, up around 2017. You see, yeah, and maybe we don't know when we talk about what are the benefits. So we can even trace benefits to that time we were serving. Then now, when also it comes to the voting and dynamics about the Somalia fronting the lady. Now, if you look at how it happened from reliable media, is that Somalia itself is the one that came out that they want to front a candidate before herself coming out to confirm. And one of the reasons why Somalia is to increase its influence in the continental political environment. Somalia, not by any bad faith, it has experienced a few challenges here and there, and now becoming stable. So it also wants to participate in the affairs of the AU, and it's very understandable. So now that
I agree with you. Somalia,
yes,
for the last more than 30 years, since the 1991 civil war, they've not been stable. But if you look at how they've been progressing, maybe for the last decade, for the last 10 years, we can see there's some positive stability. For now, they've had 2 successful elections that have been peaceful. So maybe they also want some space in Africa. And to deal with the issue, like we are having the Federal Republic of Somalia and the Somaliland over there, maybe they also want to get away, which I understand they still claim part of the Somaliland, which has not been recognized by the AU. Though that is a story for another day. We'll get another time and look into that. So far, it is Raila and the former foreign affairs who are contesting for this, and already you've given us an insight in those people who've already shown some support to Raila. So basically, how are these elections like? Do presidents vote? And do they do it through a secret ballot? Is it done on a single day? Do they assemble there? Last time Kenya fronted was it the foreign affairs? We fronted Amina Mohammed, who did not succeed. She missed it maybe by some few votes. So let us have maybe a minute break. Then after that, maybe you'll be able to make us understand how this voting or how this election normally takes place.
But what political leader can stand up and say, my party is a party of principles? For the party of Kennedy is also the party of Islam. The party of Javits is also the party of Goldwater. Where is our party? Where is the political party that will make it unnecessary to march on Washington? Where is the political party that will make it unnecessary to march in the streets of Birmingham? Where is the political party that will protect the citizen of Albany, Georgia? Do you know that in Albany, Georgia, 9 of our leaders have been indicted, not by the Dixiecrats, but by the federal government for peaceful protests? But what did the federal government do when Albany Deputy Sheriff beat Attorney C.B. King and left him half dead? What did the federal government do when local police officials kicked and assaulted the pregnant wife of Slater King and she lost her baby? Those who have said be patient and wait, we must say that we cannot be patient. We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching and welcome back. This is Afrique 24 Hour. And of course, we are just having some conversation with Wakili Aboya Kennedy. We are trying to look into this AU bid. And it's good that we are getting some informed information from an expert. We've started by looking at what AU is, what it stands for, and some of the structures that are at AU. So now we want to know what exactly happens in that elections. How is these elections normally like? I can see Laban Misiani is saying that Baba will win with the media vote in round 1. So maybe it seems Laban is privy to some of the voting processes. These rounds, how many rounds are they? So I'll give it to you, Wakili Karibu Tena, so that you can be able to take us through what exactly happens during this voting. I understand there are some rounds. Which kind of rounds are these, and how does it happen until they get to a leader before we look into possibility of now Raila reaching all these rounds or getting it in round 1 as Laban Misiani is trying to preempt?
Yes. Thank you, Laban. It's our wish that he wins. Yeah. Now, I want to state that the elections of the AU Commission Chair is a very rigorous one. It's not easy. And I back my argument with the past experiences. Let's start from 2012 when Honorable Dr. Dlamini Zuma was elected. She was elected after the previous chair, Jean Ping, had vied for re-election. And they went for the rounds that I'm going to talk about. And it failed until they had to organize a fresh election. And that's now when Dlamini was the deputy by then, contested again with him. She now met the threshold and she was elected. That is one. Two, in 2017, when we had AU Extraordinary Summit in Kigali, one of the agenda items was to try and come up with the election of the AU chair. It never happened because there was a stalemate and it was postponed up to the following year. 2016, up to the following year, yes. That is 2016, and then it was postponed up to 2017. And that is when the current chair was pitched or against our very own, the former Foreign Affairs Minister, Ambassador or Honorable Ambassador Amina Mohammed. That one also went many rounds, which I'm going to discuss. It was not what we may call an easy one. Now, in the history of the AU since restructuring in 2002, when it started becoming effective, we have not have any AU Commission chair who has ever served 2 terms except the current one. So I'm bringing that one to prepare the ground. So why is it that difficult? Yeah, it is difficult because, first of all, there's that legal aspect that has to be met. And I think we have delved into that. Now, the political part of it is where now this difficulty comes from. And that justifies why former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga does these round robins and shuttle diplomacy amongst the African states. Now, according to the Constitutive Act, according to the election procedures, is that both the AU Assembly and the Executive Council, they vote by secret ballot at the same time for a decision to stand or the outcome of the election to stand. The person being elected must marshal 2/3 of all the AU members. Now, initial elections, we had 54 member states because Morocco was not a member of AU until 2017 when it was readmitted. So the mathematicians like you, Leon, you can now look at 55 and divide by 2/3 and you see the number that former Prime Minister Raila needs to meet. Now, what happens during the elections? Because of different political reasons, because there are no legal reasons there, member may abstain to vote. A member, for any reason, may choose to vote another candidate. Let's assume that, first of all, giving a scenario of there are two. So it means that if they don't find an ultimate winner with the 2/3, then they will go to those many rounds. Now, if there are many, each round the other ones drop. But let's say now there are not many. They will go to do those rounds until the 2/3 is met. And why is the political game becoming now the thing here? Is that we have seen these previous elections, except for the second re-election of the current chair of the African Union Commission. The previous ones, no lawyer, no political scientist, no whatever can explain the reasons why those persons maybe would fail to get the 2/3. Okay, if there are many, you say there are different interests. But now, if we are talking about regionalism, which they introduced in 2018, because if now in East Africa or in Eastern Africa, for that matter, we are the one producing candidates. These are all our people. If we sit and say, let's say, we are going for this person, does it mean that now, if it is Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, Honorable Raila Odinga, would have a free ride? Still, for political reasons, it is not guaranteed that he's going to find it on the first round.
Now, how? Because already the committee over there had agreed that this one, it is an Eastern region moment. What if these member countries who come from Eastern region have a meeting among themselves, they discuss their shared interest, then they come up with a consensus that, okay, it is our moment, we are going to have one candidate, meaning there will be no competitor. Should they still have, should this candidate go and compete against himself or against herself?
Actually, that's a very good question. But apparently, as per the rules, there is no unopposed, which we always have in our own settings. When we have our groups, when we form our associations and groups, and at those very levels, you find so and so has been, elected and opposed. Even at the national elections, I think we have those scenarios. But in this context here, there must be buy-in of the 2/3 of the AU members, unless they change those rules prior to the election. But as it stands now, Raila will still be subjected to all the processes until the very end. And that's why we say, because of different interests, he may be guaranteed of the eastern part of Africa, but he needs to do a lot with the western part so that he can garner the required threshold. So that's why we say, and that's why we see that he has come out very clearly and is really, pushing his agenda. He's traveling. Otherwise, if it was that easy, the thing was to go to Somalia, sit down with the Somalian government and say, hey, withdraw your candidate. And then former Prime Minister would be coming back in his Capitol Hill office and relaxing, waiting next year, February, to be announced the chair of the African Union Commission. But you see, he's putting effort and he's also aware. And it's not surprising that even at this moment, they have already reached out, and probably the Somalian candidate is just warming up to pull out at the very last minute. What did I say? The intention of Somalia fronting a candidate was for them to increase prominence. So they can still use that one until probably December. Because according to the rules, again, the candidate must be circulated to the member states at least 3 months before the election. And the election, as of now, election will be around the third week. Sorry, the last week of February 2025. So if you also use the mathematics, you look at 3 months before. So they still got a lot of time for Somalia even to ride on that for prominence purposes. But I'm very, very sure that it should not be a problem. And it is not the problem that Raila would be, honorable former Prime Minister, would be losing sleep over. He's losing sleep over the 2/3 and not over another candidate. Unless another one comes, but I don't think with the level of engagements that we have had or we have seen, definitely the Eastern African region will settle on him. But with that, there's still also work to be done to ensure that he wins in round one. Just like, was it who mentioned about round one? Laban. Just like Laban wishes. So, but there's that process that has to be followed. And that is now where he needs to focus on, and you can see he's doing so.
That one is really, really, really clear. Now back to we are having a candidate. Already you've said Raila, the qualifications and everything. Do you think he's fit for the task now that you understand very well some of the roles that he's going to be performing? I remember before at the 2022 elections, he was heading the department, the infrastructural department. He was a high commissioner there. Do you think that role and maybe his role as a former prime minister, a former minister, and a member of parliament has prepared him enough that he is better than maybe so far we can only compare him to the counterpart from Somalia who declared interest, and maybe anybody else will declare their interest. Do you think? Why do you think African should be convinced that Raila is the best bet?
Yes, I would refer you again to the interviews that are organized for these persons who want to contest to be the African Commission Chair, African Union Commission Chair, and the way they frame their questions would help us answer this particular question, the same question you have raised. Now, looking at suitability of Raila delivering, we need to go to the vision of the AU. And I said as I began is that political and economic cooperation. Those ones, the core visions is political and economic cooperation, or economic integration for that matter. Then it also extends to defense and security. Now, let us take the four. Starting with political. I think it's in the public knowledge that Raila is the best player when it comes to political games in terms of marshalling the masses, uniting followings, and all that. He's one of the politicians with the largest following in the history of Kenya, if I'm not wrong. So politically, with that kind of ability or that competence at the national level, there's no doubt that if there's anything to be achieved through a political process, Raila would be able to gain the buy-in of other member states actually to make sure that it goes through. Economic, yes. Raila is not an economist, but his ideas and his ideology, his philosophy would tell you that is this person who actually has very, very good thoughts in terms of economic development of any in any time. And you can look at when he was, of course, he was the not High Commission but High Representative of Infrastructure, the AU. But also look at when he was the Minister for Roads in Kenya. And one of the roads that you can now, it was named Raila Odinga Road. I don't know whether it's still named the Magadi Road. And you see the delivery that he did. And also in the history of Kenya, if I may not be wrong, during the Raila Kibaki era, I think we realized a lot of economic gains in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of even the social social development and so forth. And like schools, hospitals, different programs and projects that people would still relate today. And we could say, or we can say that it was a combination of two brilliant thoughts. That is of the former president, the late Mwai Kibaki, and of course Raila. So in every capacity he has served within the government, you can really trace some performance at the level of the national government. I don't want to talk about at the level of the parliament, because he is also a parliamentary, and there are those other quarters that would say that when he was an MP, and so forth. But that's not the yardstick at this point. Let us look at his performance at the national. And the third one in that context is is when he was appointed the High Representative for Infrastructure of the AU. I think it is on record that Raila commissioned one of the largest dams in East and Central Africa. It's called Dam Enga or something like that in DRC. Yes, so he did a lot. Maybe it's not in the media, but he really did some work which he can still mention, and someone would say this person is pro development. Coming to the defense, peace and security, Raila is a peace lover. If you trace the post-election violence, were it not Raila conceding and accepting, the Nusu Mukati thing, I think Kenya would have gone into tatters. And as much as people might say that sometimes, his followers would act in one way or the other, but sincerely, nobody has ever linked Raila with any kind of whatever directly. Because politics, once you create an environment and you are the one, the leader, everybody will attribute everything that whoever does to you. But sincerely, we have not seen him being linked directly. Otherwise, he would have been prosecuted. Have you ever seen someone going to court saying in Kenyan history saying he's suing Raila for any atrocity? Talk about The Hague. Was his name in the Basha? It was not really there. And we cannot fault those big experts that were carrying out that from the witnesses, from everything. I don't think they would have left his name for any reason. And if not, if they maybe covered it for political convenience, I don't think he would have been trusted by the AU in that capacity that he served recently. Because AU is a very, very sensitive organization. Of course, when we talk about the benefits later. So looking at that, you can see he was already trusted at the continental level. He was already trusted even at the regional level. And therefore, with that, you can also find that Raila has, that capability of leading to that front. And generally, Raila has made good friends across Africa. He has made good friends across Africa. And what does that mean? AU would not, the African Union would not want the CEO to be someone from in a particular corner of the continent who is only known in that corner. They want someone who has some, level of popularity across Africa. And I've just mentioned, even now, from South Africa to Nigeria, West Africa, you can know that Raila has many, many, many friends across board. So with this one here, I don't have any doubt that if Raila is entrusted with this,
you said with that one, you don't have any doubt Raila is trusted, and actually you are hopeful that he's going to make it. Of course, that is our wish, that is our prayer, that he makes it, because when Raila makes it, he is not only going to make Kenya proud, but he's going to make the entire Eastern region and the EAC proud. So I want you to listen to this comment by one of the Kenyan senators. Then you'll tell me what you make of it. He speaks of kuibiwa, possibility of Raila kuibiwa huko. And I know, according to the structure, that the process that you've indicated here, and if I refer to a certain comment that somebody made that Raila is going to make it kwa sababu huko hakuna IBC and such kind of things. I just want you to listen to this.
Meona jana, Your Excellency, huyu ndugu yetu Raila na watu yake wanasema akichukua AU ati anataka kurudi kusimama kiti 27. Tunasema kuna mnyama anaitwa fisi. Fisi ni tamaa ilimuua. Aliponuka harufu ya nyama akaenda njia mbaya, panda akapasuka msamba. Na mimi naona hii tinga mnasukuma na president, Your Excellency, munitume nikuwe chief agent. Unajua hii mtu analalanga kura inaibwa. Munituma Addis Ababa niende nichunge kura isiibwe, kwa sababu anatangatanga huko akisema naomba AU lakini anaomba kiti ya Kenya. So mimi nataka niseme, let us, Your Excellency, na uendelee kukuja. Let that person individually, Your Excellency, asikuwe na tamaa. Na nataka Bishop Emeritus, Bishop Arabiego, ombea yeye asikuwe na tamaa. Kama tumeunga yeye mkono ya AU, aombe kiti ya AU, awache kutusumbua ati 2020, na akisimama pia 27 atanyorosha na hawa ndume kama kawaida, lakini tunataka ang'ang'ane kwa sababu anaweza kosa hiyo ya AU na akose safari ya kwenda mbinguni. So mumuombe asikose yote.
I think you heard that. So my question is, okay, of course, I'll ask you what happens if Raila doesn't get that position, but I'll ask you, let me start by asking you, I know in the process you'll explain, you've already said it is not possible for such kind of things to happen, but if you read politics in this, the senator is somehow trying to complain that if Raila wants to go to AU, then he need to stop the local politics. He doesn't have to put his influence in the Kenyan politics. He need to desist from commenting or from participating or associating with the local politics. So, what does the AU say about politics and serving in that secretariat?
Yes. First, I think those are political pronouncements, and it's very difficult to basically respond to someone just making any other. I think that's comedy to me, because you cannot say there's I don't know Kuibiwa Kura Kule Sijini. We have explained the procedures and the processes of elections. It's by our secret ballot, and of course one has to meet the 2/3. And I've said and I've mentioned it's not a ride in the park. So there's a lot of work that has to be done so that Raila will be able to garner the required numbers. Now, when it comes to what does it, if he's now appointed and he becomes if he's now appointed and he becomes the African Union Commission chair, what are the rules that govern his tenure of office? Yeah, I gave an analogy, or I equated this to the civil servants that we have at our national levels. It is in the constitution that our civil servants are not supposed to engage in politics. And therefore, the same applies because why is it so? It is to ensure that there are no those dilemmas such as conflict of interest, and of course, not getting the best out of that person. We have mentioned about the experiences, we have mentioned about the skill sets, we have mentioned about what is required of that person. Now, the moment you are appointed, the AU expects you to give your arm and a leg. So if you are not able to, if you are going to indulge in politics, then it means that you will not be capable of delivering. And there are procedures for actually removing an unperforming chairperson of the African Union Commission. There are procedures of that. So to maybe not get there, obviously, and it's something simple that you are not expected to still play politics. But now again, you have mentioned influence. Raila has built political influence over the ages. If you talk about the buildings like Vasco da Gama, why are they standing today? Because they have passed the test of time. So Raila's influence has passed the test of time, and it is a lie to assume. It's actually inaccurate. Correction is it's inaccurate to assume that the moment Raila is in the African Union Commission, if once he's appointed, and we hope so, then you will not have influence. Raila has a chance to serve there for a maximum of 8 years. If he is re-elected, and if he's not re-elected, he's going to serve there for a maximum of 4 years, and then he will be back to Kenya. As a person like Raila, I would also equate him to Obasanjo. Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria, is no longer a president, but you can find him is very powerful. You are not going to take him away from the political affairs of the African Union any soon. So even Raila, I don't know the matrices of measuring that influence, which they are saying it should not be. But I'm really pretty sure that we cannot say Raila's influence will not be felt at the national politics. it will still be there. He may not directly get involved, yeah, because that will hurt his office, or rather his tenure of office. But in one way or the other, I think even at the end of it, Raila will still be playing a political role, maybe as a political figure, godfather, or any other. So that influence, if they are thinking that it's going away, I'm afraid it might not go away. But directly, he may not. One of the things that he cannot do, obviously, is to endorse a candidate the way he has been doing. Second one, he cannot buy. It's simple. He cannot buy. Vie for any position. And thirdly, he cannot be the leader of this current party. He will have to resign and hand over the parties and everything. But this is a party that is the one who built. So even if he hands over, who tells you the way that party will operate? What does it require? It only requires WhatsApp messages for him to organize things here and there. So that's why I'm like, are you going to hack those WhatsApp messages and phone calls just to make sure that he's not in touch with these guys? So he's going to be there. What people need to focus on first is Raila getting this position. And the second thing is to gauge him in terms of his political activities. Once he's in the office, I don't see any cause for an alarm for someone to stand on the podium and start saying, you see, he needs to do this, he needs to do that. Even when the race has not begun, someone is busy saying that these lines are not okay here. So let people, or the field is smoother, is slippery, or the field whatever. Let the race begin. Let him be in the office, and then now people now bring those kind of concerns based on facts, not based on speculations and innovations. The way now we are seeing it, it is not good. By the way, for me, I don't find those ones very good because Raila's appointment to be the AU Commission chair is not only a Kenyan affair. It is a regional affair because we are talking about the Eastern region, and also a continental affair because he is going to be the CEO of Africa. Now, where you come from, people already, associating you to other things. Who says that they don't have media? In every state, we have so many channels of communication. That kind of pronouncement would find itself somewhere in Igbo, Nigeria, or find some in Mauritania, or further, and it does not bring a good picture. So maybe our politicians should need to understand that what is being done right now is not a Kenyan affair. So we need to cease from associating Raila with national politics. We don't want him to play the national politics. Why are we now pulling him again to national politics? He has not communicated since he said he's vying for this one. He has been up and down. I think the only event he attended was, I think, in this one where he endorsed Badi and so forth. But I know himself, he knows he cannot mess up with this process. So we need to allow him do his thing and then judge him once he is there.
That's true. And you know very well, Raila have been in this politics for long, and his politics has always been defined or characterized with the opposing the ruling, the ruling regime. So how do you see Kenyan politics if Raila goes to AU, because he will now not be actively involved in politics? Remember, he's been having these press conferences to confront the government whenever he feels that what the government is doing is wrong. I've been calling for demonstrations. He's been like exposing some of the evils that are happening in the government. And I know one of the roles that he'll have at AU is to ensure that these governments are integrated and coordinate well with them. So he will not want a position whereby he acts as a watchdog to Kenyan government. So do you think that we have people that are prepared well that can run a politics similar to that of Raila?
Kenyan politics has really matured. And Raila has also trained so many people in that politics, both within the government and in the other side of the government, the minority and the majority, or the opposition. And, as much as we can say Raila has been carrying the position politics in Kenya, a lot of it right now is actually being cascaded. We are seeing a number of political figures emerging who are bold enough to to come out and share their thoughts openly when they feel things are not going right in one way or the other. So it means that Raila is just going to serve, but in Kenyan politics there will be no much change. Of course, there will be that there may be, not will be, but there may be that disorientation for a few moments as people position themselves here and there. And that will depend on how his party organizes the transition and what we call succession planning, which I know they are now burning midnight oil, trying to figure out, because that transition or the succession planning will determine, first of all, it will determine the survival of the party. And his party is one of the biggest and has been there. If you look at the number of years he has used it. So that is going to determine that. But in terms of the general national politics, I think you are going to see a lot of shift in terms of people from the minority joining majority. Because, when your father is at home, there's that level of confidence that you have. But when your father now goes to work in town, other kids will come and press their fingers on your nose, and you cry, and daddy is not there unless you call daddy. So what will be the consequence of that? The consequence of that is that if you are the kid now, because your father figure is not around, then you either join those particular kids who are pressing your nose with their fingers, or you become solo in your house. If you become solo in your house, you're not going to solve the problem. So the best way out will be to join. So you are going to see a lot of shift, in my own opinion. You may see a lot of shift that people would now start accepting the government of the day, and you see them working together, which has not been the case as much. But I would see that there would be that kind of alignment towards the government. And that issue of minority majority may fade off a little bit until the next election.
Maybe I just want to respond to this. Mohammed Ege is saying that the imperialists do not want to see Raila lead Kenya or Africa at all. He stands for what they loathe. Do you think this can work against Raila in his quest to be the AU Commission chair?
There's this nature when we were doing the principles of human rights, the tenets, not only principles, and why the human rights. Human rights, it comes because humans are selfish in nature, and of course they only pursue two things that are very major. That is pursuit for happiness and self-fulfillment. So dominance is one of the I would call is one of the characteristics of every person. So the imperialists, the oligarchs, obviously, Raila at the level of the national politics, Raila is a very big stakeholder in the national politics. And therefore, even the government of the day, whichever, not even current, not even previous one, at one point or the other, you will see them coming to sit with him down. I want to say at the beginning of the current government, nobody knew that there would be something, Raila becoming closer to the government. And where is he today? So in one way or the other, he has been a kind of, I would say, a force to reckon vis-a-vis the people who are fighting dominance, or who want to dominate the political spheres at the national level. And what Mohammed says, it may be or may not be true, because the moment he goes there, the question is, does Raila's prominence increases or decreases? It increases. And that's why I say it is difficult for you to make an assumption that Raila's influence can be cut off. When he's going for a continental office, where now his dominance will be felt more. You understand? Yeah. So basically, it means that at the end of this period, or when he comes back, let's say he's done for 4 years. This is where now imperialists, the oligarchs are now fearing. He's done for 4 years, then he comes back. He will not be Raila that is that Raila will be calling shots, because when you talk about I thought you would ask me what are the benefits of Raila even to Kenya when he becomes the chair of the African Union Commission.
Actually, when Raila becomes the chair, so how does Kenya stand to benefit from this?
Yes, now that is now where now the imperial is, because one is the once is the chair of the African Union Commission. You know, as I said, is the CEO. He's the gatekeeper of all the African affairs. So if we talk about the development partners, you know, today we call it world systems in international relations. Today we talk about the West and the East in terms of diplomatic relations between Kenya, Africa, and let's say the West, the Americas, Canada, the UK, and of course the East, the China, the Chinese, Russia, and so forth. You understand? Sorry, Chinese and China and India. I'm sorry for that. So now, if these development partners want to have some candid engagement with Kenya, with Africa, the person to whom they will be meeting is Raila. So in that context, Raila will be able to have that influence of sitting in Addis Ababa, picking a phone call, and calling the president of the US, or calling the president of China, or calling the prime minister of India. At this particular time, he may not have that privilege. It's only the president who has that privilege, picks the phone and calls. Now look at when he has that privilege. If you can discuss with people who own power, you're already smelling power. They say when you want to grow, please pick those friends who have more influential, and therefore they will also teach you some level of becoming influential or making whatever they are making. So that is the platform where Raila would be. And now, does it mean that is with that kind of thing, if he wants to, let's say, champion a given cause or champion a given matter, what will happen? He's able to broker that. You are talking about these Eurobond things. You are talking about, this infrastructure development between Kenya. You are talking about, Kenya, we are talking about the debt. The public debt ratio is very high. In that position, Raila will be able to negotiate with China and say, okay, we are talking about, because I'm giving an example. China is interested in Africa. Actually, remember the AU headquarters is a donation from China, from Chinese government. Now with that, they are also interested in coming and, participating in the development of our infrastructure. They are gaining, because that's why we call them development partners. They are gaining. Now, if they want certain interests within Africa, you understand, certain projects that have been spearheaded. I talked about the Agenda 2063. If you look at the Agenda 2060, the Africa we want, there are so many projects, and these projects will require those external skills or external expertise from China, from the West, from wherever, to come. So Agenda 2060, the Africa we want, the implementing organ is the African Union Commission. Now, let's say we have what we call one network area, or we have these IT projects, we have even infrastructure networking. You know what we call these, at the level of East Africa can give you, we have the Northern Corridor, which comes from Lamu all the way to Kigali up to DRC. Then we have the Southern Corridors. Now, these projects are not done by individual countries. These projects are done at the regional and the continental level. Now, if those guys want that, Raila will be able to intervene when it comes to requesting China to write our debts off. We will no longer have the debt burden because they have negotiated at the continental level. Raila has told them, fine, I'm going to take care of your interest, but also take care of my country's interest. You see that? That is one.
I see that. Huh? Mohammed still insists that, okay, Raila is a household name in Africa. Yes, but the voters are a handful. I think this one you'd already talked a bit how the voting process takes place, and the possibility of somebody winning and not winning, because the people who are voting are not like the countries voting, like the kind of the general elections we do have here. And they fear Raila will propel African reconnaissance and awakening, something that they directly suppress. I think here is referring to the Western forces. So maybe a simple question. Does the Western and the Eastern forces have got their hand in this kind of election? Do they? Of course, they have interest. So do they have an influence on who becomes the chair?
You see, as we talk now, they are mark timing, and we are talking about the future of global governance, whereby we talk about globalization. What affects someone in Cambodia or in Haiti now affects Kenyans. Why do we have riots in Haiti and our headlines are like, hey, you see? So that is the essence of globalization. So you cannot rule it out that these other external forces are actually part of the process. They may not have the powers to influence it directly. And let's say that it played out very well before these reforms when we were doing elections of the AU Commission chair in 2012, the ones I was telling you in 2008. It played a role because there was stalemate because it was about East versus West. So these big economies would be like, do you think East is the gateway to the East African to the African market? Do you think West is the gateway to the African market? You understand? Because whoever you support will definitely give you some upper hand in one way or the other. So we cannot rule out the East or West. But let me respond to the Africa reconnaissance that he's talking about. I think at this point, oligarchs, whoever these guys are, the ones he's referring to, I think they must be alive to the fact that things are changing. And therefore, Africa, we need to integrate more and have a common force towards a given objective. Now, if we have these other groups that feel like when we are disintegrated is when they are thriving, then for me, I would just say that that must not be a factor in any of this. Yeah, so it must not be a factor. Reason being that Raila, with his position at the African Union Commission, of course, he will come up with the ideas. These ideas are ratified at different levels. So Raila alone cannot be the reason for someone to fear the future of the continent. It takes Raila, it takes the chair, the sitting chair at every particular time of the African Union, not the African Commission, not the African Union Commission, but so it takes different structures and different levels. So Raila is not going to be the sole decision maker. So I don't see really what the fear would be. And at the level of the continent, I don't believe there is that particular concern over Raila, unless there is that one that we can see from the media. But I believe if there is any fear, I see he's saying that he's looking for inevitables. Yes, inevitables are there. Of course, the challenges are there. And this is what I said, as I mentioned. It is not a ride on the park. Like, it's not just a free fall. It's no mean feat. So there's this influence that he's talking about may come not directly to AU, but it can go through the partner states. To the member states. I was giving you why have we had challenges in the previous elections. Even when maybe talk about re-elections, someone has served, I've told you in the history of AU since the Constitutive Act was put up, is only the current one who has served for two parts. So you can see that. You can see that. I don't know maybe if I've captured what is, but I would love if you can bring it out so clearly, then we are able to.
I get you. I get you well. Maybe I just want us to have a 1 minute water break. Then later on, as Raila is leaving, he is the party leader, ODM. He is the Azimio coalition leader. And he is actually, if we have among the Luo community, he is like a patron or something called a kingpin, not only in Luo, but in the entire Nyanza. So these positions are going to be vacant. Already you've seen what is taking place. There are people who already started strategically positioning themselves. So as we get back, I just want your opinion. Do you think this is going to be the end of these organizations, or this is going to be the end of these outfits? Is it going to be the end of Azimio outfit, the end of ODM outfit, and the end of something called the Luo Unity, who've been among the political outfit that is considered to be united, not only in Kenya, but in the entire Africa, whereby whenever they make a decision, they make a decision as a community. Whenever maybe Raila says something, people follow, and I can say they religiously follow it and they obey it, in something that has made people unable maybe to break them because they are united. So that is what I want to know from you after this short break.
Join us every Friday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. for a captivating journey into the world of love, relationships, and romance. Presented by the dynamic trio Maggie Knox, MC Jesse, and Annie Oweru, Bed of Roses. Promises to be your weekly dose of heartwarming stories, insightful discussions, and expert advice on matters of the heart. Whether you're single, in a relationship, or simply love a good love story, this is the show for you. Don't miss out on the chance to unwind and indulge in the joys and challenges of love, all brought to you by our talented hosts. Tune into Africa 24 every Friday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Let us guide you through the enchanting world of Bed of Roses. Subscribe now and mark your calendars. You don't want to miss this. See you there.
Right. Thank you, guys, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. We are still having conversation, even as we are winding up. There are things that we cannot live without. I know the feeling. There is some Pan-Africanism spirit that is awakening in Africans, and that is why when you see Muhammad is talking the way he's talking, he really feels that Africa has been a sleeping giant, and it is time that we need to rise. And I believe Raila's candidacy has come at the right time, because if you listen to Raila talk, he normally have Africa at heart. He keeps on talking of Africa should trade among itself, and most of the speeches that he makes in these forums, he normally appreciates how rich Africa is and how Africa can be a giant that can depend on itself. And it keeps on reminding Africans that we need to trade among ourselves. We need to believe in our potential. And shall he get the position of which we are all praying that he get, then it might be one of the breakthrough to Africanism, Africans, whereby they will now start feeling and realizing their potential. But back at home, remember that he's also going to be missed. I've told you that Raila is the head of, he is the leader of Azimio coalition. He's the party leader of ODM, one of the current longest active political party that we have in Kenya. And he's also the de facto leader of the Luo and the entire Nyanza community. So what happens to these outfits when Raila finally exits the scene to go and try his hand in the continent at the continental level? Are we going to see the fall of ODM, the end of Azimio, and the end of the unity or the bloc that Nyanza has always been known for?
Okay, thank you. But before I get there, you brought a very good insight, and now I can catch or I can feel what Mohammed is actually trying to bring out. I agree. When you talk about West and East, and those are competing interests, and obviously they will thrive when we are subdivided, like when we are not having a common voice, so that one would eat one part, then another eats another part. You know what I mean? So sincerely, Raila is a pro integration, is pro Africa, and therefore, if probably is coming that ideology, it can rub one of those two externals in one way, badly in one way or the other, which is true. Because if we are one Africa and we like look at the vision that we have to integrate as a continent. Now we have the African Continental Free Trade Area, whose secretariat sits in Accra, Ghana. I think you saw early this week, I think the President, His Excellency William Ruto, hosted the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And some of the discussions around it is to make sure that we open the market and we are able, so that we are able to trade amongst the African countries. And I would maybe to give the practical reasoning to it. Right now we have the ESE, whereby we are now trading so seamlessly because we have removed the internal tariffs, we have common external tariffs, and we also fighting the non-tariff barriers. Then we have the COMESA, which is also a regional kind of arrangement that eases that. Now, beyond COMESA, now we have the African Continental Free Trade Area. It is one of the flagships of the Africa we want. And what does it do? It also aims to put common tariffs in terms of internal trading amongst the AU member states. And now, once that is done, then we shall now move to the next stage of customs union within Africa. Now, when we reach the stage of customs union, it means that Africa will be one integrated market. And once it is one integrated market, we shall sit down and voice as a people and say, for any engagement with the external stakeholders or external partners beyond the continent would be applicable to common rules. For example, if we say we need these specific standards, and then we say if these standards, they must be following A, B, C, D. And therefore, you don't find that if I buy iron box, today if you do sampling of iron box the way we buy across Africa, they are from different manufacturers. Each of African countries today, I don't know, maybe our viewers can attest, those who travel. If I'm traveling today from Kigali to Kenya, even the way the sockets are put is different. If I carry my Kigali charger with the two pins, coming to use it in Kenya, I will have to need another thing to fix it. You understand? And if I carry the one which is very common in Kenya, which has the 3 pins, if I come to Kigali, in some instances, it may not be applicable. So you find that gives you that we have different standards. So if at one point now we integrate as one market, we are going to agree as Africa that if it's about the charging ports, about the sockets, we have this standard. The same way now you see iPhone 15. They have now, the West, they have resorted, they are now going to use the Type-C. You understand? So, once you do that one, what does it mean? It means that now we are able to regulate our own space. And nobody is going to come to Africa to start exploiting our markets. You understand? So we are not going to find, if let's say we integrate our market and we are importing, let's say, cars. Today, when I'm in Kigali, I drive on the left. I come to Kenya, I drive on the right. Those tells you that now, but when we integrate, those things will be all harmonized so that if we contract any company from China or from Europe, it's going to any African country, they will use the same standards for making roads. You understand? They will use the same standards. So with that one, it gives us a greater voice. But again, as Mohammed says, it is not something that would be sweet in the ears of these other external parties. Because it means that if there's one tender, if it is not won by East, and the West has won it. But today we have so many tenders, they're winning all of us. They're all eating from here. But anyway, I think there's still work in progress. A lot more needs to be done. And we just hope that Raila rekindles that discussion. Muammar Gaddafi, came up with it. But the fall of Muammar Gaddafi was also as a reason of the West. And America, for that purpose, the US was blamed here and there. He might have had his, downfalls, but again, he had very good idea of uniting Africa. And remember also at the point when he was serving as the president of Libya, Libya was the largest contributor to the African Union. So those kind of visions, and again, you have seen President Paul Kagame, His Excellency Paul Kagame of Rwanda, and that's why he was chosen in 2016 to lead the team, the task force, to do the transformations that were needed. He has always, and his speeches, I think you can find them online, he has always advocated for African United. And that's why African Continental Free Trade Area was signed in Kigali, actually. It is one of the treaties, that have ever been signed at a go with the highest number of member states of the AU. You understand? So we have so many people beyond Raila. We have the President, Paul Kagame, is really pro integration. Of course, we have that Raila. We have Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria. We have, President, the current president of Kenya, Ruto. You had his speech when we had the UN General Assembly meeting, when he was talking passionately about Africa and giving equal terms for Africa in these international discussions and so forth. So there are so many people. We only need someone to sustain that momentum, and I believe Raila will be sustaining. Now, if there's these people who are feeling that the shoe is pinching when we are integrating as Africa, for me, I would only wish that they fade off, and they must not stand on the way for Africa to integrate, because that is exactly what we need. It is you and I that will benefit when these borders are abolished. Right now, it takes you the same amount of air ticket to fly from Kenya to, let's say, to DRC, actually even more. That also, as someone who is flying from Kenya to Dubai, same. Now look at Dubai, very far away. If you look at the way even our air tickets are within the continent, we are not connected. Now, when you want to make a phone call, of course, within the East Africa, we have made it, but try making a phone call across the African countries. You will not manage it, but try making a phone call to Germany. Is the cheapest. So those are the kind of discussions that we really need to have on the table. And therefore, for me, I would go on the positive side that these people want to stand on the way of us integrating all these aspects must not be tolerated. Let them allow us to move as Africa. Let them have good people of goodwill, sons and daughters of Africa, people like Raila, people who really want this thing to be taken forward. And therefore, I just pray that these particular persons that I share my fear with Mohammed about, that we deal with them and we find a way in which they are not going to impede any of this vision. Let's go to the national politics. Of course, I'm not really fan of trying to discuss the national politics because
actually, I know I even didn't want to discuss politics, but there's something we can't run away from. Politics is part and parcel of our life. Yeah.
Yes, I do agree. Now, nationally, Raila is I told you he has built his status for many years, and it has matured. He has brewed it. If it was this traditional brewery, it is the best now. The best of the best. I don't think there's any other in the Kenyan politics. Maybe someone is building up, but before Raila there was someone, and that was his father. Before Raila's father, there were also those are the guys who actually fought the people like Tom Mboya. They were very influential actually, and I mean there's so many people who have really done marvelous, and not only in Kenya, we can also compare in other regions. So there's that natural transition that will eventually take charge. What legacy? I mean, what we know is that there is that legacy also which is not going to die. The legacy of marshalling the following is a legacy that Raila has left amongst his members. So it means that whoever will fight to gain some level of prominence, with of course guidance of Raila, directly or indirectly, this person will still enjoy a substantial following. And then people will be giving this person time to see, is he giving us those things that are sweet in our ears? Because the following of Raila actually is not about even, sorry to say, it's not about that he's giving them anything other than just, promising, some, good things here and there, giving hope to the downtrodden, as they say. Yeah. So if they can find a person in that caliber, I believe the same person will enjoy the kingship that Raila has been enjoying, and the same person will be able to carry the Nyanza region. But let me also express my thoughts again. I won't advocate for those regional kind of formation. We are here busy talking about African integration, and then at the national level, we are busy talking about the Western, also Nyanza, we are talking about this. And so for me, I'm like, okay, it's fine. It is there. Politics is the act of governing any society. But we need also to try and align ourselves with the same philosophies that we are advocating for at the continental level. So yes, that person come, but at least let us have these people who are trying to build a national outlook kind of formation and not the regional, because we already have counties, you understand. So the Nyanza was just a province. Now counties and counties and counties and counties. We now need to consider, it's better we form those political whatever at the county levels. At least we are able to ask ourselves things that resonate with us, things that are very close to us, you understand? Because today, when we look at the devolution, county is giving us opportunity to feel what we were not feeling long ago. So we have that opportunity to make concrete discussions with our leaders at the county level. So it should not be regional. I would prefer maybe having the county levels. And as I say that, I foresee a situation whereby the politics of Kenya is no longer going to be along the ethnic and the regional spheres. That one I'm pretty sure. Because the new generation that is coming up have different perspectives. This internet has also helped us. The media, you are also helping us. Why? Because as I talk right now, someone else will come and review this. And in one way or the other, they will be like, okay, could these ideologies be? Yes, they are good. Because for your son, for my sons and daughters, for everybody, these young people are coming. They just want this world where they are able to align themselves with anybody that they want. You understand? If now the borders are being broken virtually, you see, borders are being broken. Today you are here. I told you the nature of my work. I'm in Kigali, but it doesn't mean that whatever I'm doing is just based here. Maybe a large chunk of it is here, but I would be doing other things in other different territories, which of course benefit me where I am. Now the same thing also we need to apply it within our political system in Kenya. And Raila has done it. And also, as you say, is a statesman. We said he's a statesman. And as he ages, you realize that he's really calling for that, national kind of approach in all these matters. So I believe someone is going to hold the brief for him, but it won't be longer before now. And that's why I said also that you are going to see a lot of shifting from this side to the other side.
No, already we started seeing the shapes. Like yesterday, we were surprised to see the Embakasi East MP Babu, coming together with Wamuchomba, the Githunguri MP, Mwenje, among other youthful leaders, to form an outfit, a movement that they call Team Ground, or the Ground Team. That's just a political movement, and they said because opposition is relaxed, they now want to take the role of opposition. People have started realigning themselves, and maybe it might be they're preparing for 2032 or 2027, but already there. I get you clear. So maybe one last one. This is not about politics, but I know this is about our economy. We've had some controversial bills that are currently acts. The first one was the Finance Act, which I've seen some of the MPs who've been participated in passing it are really giving excuses and accepting that they are part of it that was not good. So there's this big agenda. I know you've been in Rwanda, and where people normally in Eastern Africa, we say that it's one of the countries that at least after there was and the genocide that happened there, they really picked on a positive note and have really been growing well. So what is your take on this affordable housing bill? Do you see it as something that is going to transform this country, or it is just a political tool, or maybe a cash cow that some few individuals want to use to milk Kenyans?
You see, Kenya is a very interesting society, by the way. At all points, we have these protagonists or protagonism kind of scenarios. And for me, if I look at the affordable housing, is about fight for legacy. The current president, His Excellency William Ruto, just fights to leave a legacy that he will be remembered with, which is a good idea. So, and then affordable housing is not only in Kenya that this thing happens. You are talking about Rwanda. Rwanda today, I think they have put up very good structures for people who were once, living in these informal settlements, and then they build them. Then for here, actually, they give them for free. You understand? That is just Rwanda. If you look at other areas, because as a government, they have the responsibility to provide the housing, these basic needs. We are talking about universal health. And these are also engraved in the international conventions, international agreements, and all that. So we talk about the universal health. The governments of the day, they have the responsibility to ensure that everybody is able to access basic healthcare without constraint and without any disparity in terms of income levels to define who gets what. That is one. Two, housing. It is the responsibility of the governments of today, everywhere. Especially Africa is so prominent because, of course, we are lagging behind. But if you go to the West, there are those cities where people no longer build their own homestead. Everybody lives in an apartment because we build high-rise. We are able to conserve that part of land to do other, agricultural and all that. You understand? The people in Nairobi, if there was good planning, are not supposed to import sukuma wiki from Kisii. Nairobi should be planned in a way that it's also able to produce at least certain percentages of, So we have cities that have now evolved to become more of, integrated settlement areas. We have the commercial, then we have the settlement aspect of it. So affordable housing is a need that the government has to do because they just want to improve the livelihoods of Kenyans, which is the primary responsibility of the government. Now, that is on one hand. On the other hand, Kenyans are judging the projects according to the previous experiences. Rampant corruption, misappropriation of funds, gratifications of political persons. If we are building affordable housing, a politician should not come and get gratified because they have built affordable housing. It should be that they have done it and it's a responsibility that they have. So Kenyans are also not wrong to actually take this thing through some checks and balance. That if it is coming, what are those, are there procedures, for example, boarding? During that discussion of the affordable housing, I think the senator for Homa Bay raised something very nice. I watched it, that we are talking about affordable housing. Yes, we are accepting this bill, but you are saying that each person is supposed to only have one. What if everybody has gotten the affordable housing? Is it a project that is going to end? You understand? And I would also extend that question that if I get it, does it mean that if I grow old and I'm still there and my son has, and we don't have any other, because the moment we have introduced affordable housing, we are actually trying to emulate what is happening elsewhere. Places like India, you go to a place, the father lives in the ground floor, the child lives in the first floor, grandchildren, third floor, up to the end. That is how they do it. You understand? So the thing is, Kenyans are questioning what are the procedures, which I think now they are put into law, which define, and I don't think there's now no more problem. The other aspect that we need now to solve is the politics around the affordable housing. You cannot legislate politics. Yes, we understand that politics breeds law, but you cannot legislate politics, purely politics. No. So there are those things that have not been solved in terms of implementing the affordable housing. One of them is gratifications by our leaders, that once affordable housing is put up, some leader somewhere saying, you see, I brought this. No, it should not be the case. Another one is with affordable housing that also needs to be looked into is the criteria, which they have put it there. They have put the criteria there. But the question is, even today, we have criteria that are put. Go and look at even our laws regarding the application for passports. They have a defined period in which they are supposed to process it. But now you see people are like, okay, you have to take one year. So we have a problem with the implementation channels. And finally, with affordable housing is deductions. The amount they are saying is so insignificant. So the government must also come up with modalities of creating other kitty, more of a subsidizing funds. The question is, where are we going to get those funds? Yet we are already debt trapped. You see, So they also need to work around, because you cannot tell me if we are talking about affordable housing, we are talking about the low income earners. And these are guys who are maybe earning between 10,000 and let's say 50,000 or 60,000. Now take someone who's earning 20,000 and you get that percentage. And it's something, question that Kenyans were asking on social media. How long will it take for this person even to buy out, even if it is 1.5 million and you are contributing 1,000 per month? Is it practical? So I think government should come up with another program. I know we are a capitalist kind of society, but this is now where we require the socialist policies. For example, we look at that person who is not able to contribute an amount which will be substantial for this person to acquire an affordable housing. So in my opinion, it should be, other implementing instrument of that act should be that the government comes up with regulations, and these regulations will say that if affordable housing, if you are assigned that you are going to be given an affordable house, once these houses are ready, you are given irrespective whether you have finished them or not. And then if someone is earning less, why would you give this person a burden? What you do, try to get from these guys who are earning more and come to supplement the guys who are earning less. It's a socialist policy, but it is working. It is working very well. We have seen that elsewhere, and they are doing. Those are kind of questions that are surrounding the affordable housing. Otherwise, it is a good idea. It is a very nice one. If it is well implemented, it is something that will change the faces of our people living, particularly in the informal settlements. Thank you.
I get you well. It's a good idea. And of course, most people believe it's a good idea, but the problem is that there are some issues that need to be sorted. Maybe just to go through some of the comments, I can see Goodyear is saying that we also need social housing. Affordable housing should not be under politics. Otherwise, they won't be able to legislate. They will use it as a football. Havil was saying that India is poor, first of all, so they struggle even with the toilet. So don't give us India as an example. Guys, in Kenya, we do not have protagonists at all, other than egotistical antagonists. So those are some of the reactions or some of the comments that we are having there. So you are aware that this bill had already been assented to, and it's now an act, but already there are some Kenyans who've gone to court to challenge it. So they're going to challenge it. Do you think it is going to meet the legal threshold, or we are still going to be taken back to where we began to go and look into it, just at a legal perspective, at your legal perspective of view?
Yeah, let me just respond to these comments. They're very good comments here, and very, very interesting here. Yes. So, Kwani, do we need something like that to develop? I don't want to mention. No. I don't know why this person would say this. We don't need.
I think for that, I'll just clarify the one that you were saying, Kwani. Do we need? How do you call it? Do we need the genocide to develop? No, we did not say that we need genocide to develop. We just gave a history of when Rwanda began to see some positive transformation, because obviously during the genocide the country was totally shattered. So now, after the genocide, they picked the lessons, and from that they've really been an economic house. They've been growing, they've been progressing well, and that is in the public maybe domain. So maybe the issue that you can respond to, somebody has talked of mixing the affordable housing legislation and politics. Maybe you can respond to that, and the need for the social housing, maybe the difference between the affordable housing and the social housing.
Okay. I think you have clarified that, and we have to appreciate the fact that Rwanda has really tried, and we are on the ground. We are also team ground here, so we can attest that Rwanda is doing so well. So that one I can confirm. Then this one here, guys, Kenya we don't have. Okay, that one is just a comment, which we appreciate. Abuya, India is poor. I want to tell Havil that we have best practices that we can borrow. India is not poor. Kenya's GDP is 110 billion, if I'm not wrong, or thereabout. India's GDP is 3 trillion. What is the measure of poverty in his own assessment? So India is not poor as such. in every economy, we have the extremes. Even in the US, we have homeless persons. While you have your house, you are living here. So looking at your living condition plus a homeless person in the US, what would you say? Would you say now US is A or B? So I think we really need to have, kind of, appreciation of good practice elsewhere. What I meant here is that if you look at the way India planned some of these settlements, it takes care of the population. And you know that India, actually, I think they passed China. Was it last year? In terms of population. Now, they had already known that this was going to happen. So if you look at the settlement schemes that were built in India those many days, you find that they had already, they were aware of this fact that at one point, their population would really rise. And so they had to do what we call the space economy. They would really build, those apartments to make sure that family members would be able to live, as they go upwards, so that they can leave land for other purposes. So it's a good practice, and that is the essence of affordable housing. Why do we build them? First of all, the affordability. Secondly, it's also to decongest the informal settlement, so that we are able to have what we call planned settlement of our people. So please don't rub off India. India is well, and they're doing so good. If you talk about even the medicine tourism, and even population that go to India to get medicine, you cannot say that if they have those good technologies where we run to when we have certain complications that we may not be able to solve in Kenya. So it is not in a good taste to really rub off a particular country that they are poor. They are really doing well. They also have their own downfall, just like Kenya. We are also having our own challenges. Then affordable housing should not be under politics. Otherwise, yes, this one I agree. And that's why I say those political gratifications alongside the affordable housing, they are creating weak links between the purpose and, of course, the goal for which they are provided. Then another one here. Do you approve what President Kagame is doing? I know this one is not the topic of the day, so I think
I think we'll talk of that one later, because that one, those are we don't have evidence.
No, it's moving so fast. I think there's a lot of information online, Harvey. I think you spend your time a little bit so that you Google and find out whatever would be appropriate for you. Then Mohammed says the Somalis are going through it now. I don't know what he's talking about, whether affordable housing.
Mohammed is talking of this. He was responding to his comment where he said that amani na maendeleo haiji ila kwa ncha ya upanga. Like,
yes. Yes. So I think, is there any other?
No, I think that you've really responded to that, and we've even gone past time. At least we've done 2 hours 20 minutes. I expected us to do 1 hour. That is really great. You've really expanded and expounded on things that we need to know about this AU. And for those people who are doubting, who thought that maybe it is just done casually and anything can happen, I think they now understand that those are just political comments that are made, but these procedures are laid down. So anybody who followed this, I think they are well and right informed. And right now, our prayers and wishes is that Raila clinch this seat. And to the viewers who joined us, I just want to take this opportunity to thank and appreciate you, including the ones who are going to view and watch this feed later. So, Wakili, I just want to give you this opportunity to give us your final thought as we wind up this talk show.
Okay. For me, what I would say is that we need now to maybe tell our politicians to, tone down in terms of Raila's required processes to win this particular seat. They need to measure their words appropriately, because those words may not be good. Let's show the continent that we are giving them the best man for the job. Let's show the continent that we have trust in him. Let's show the continent that he is the man going to bring those changes, and he's the one going to achieve those milestones that are ahead of us. That's the only thing I would say as I close. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Much appreciation. I really appreciate sparing your time from your busy schedule just to come and explain this to us. And my viewers, I think you've heard from the guest. Is Wakili Abuya Kennedy. He's much experienced in matters of African integration. He understands much about the East African community. He understands much about the AU because that is part and parcel of what he does daily. And I can see from the comments, Habil is saying that thank you for knowledgeable Abuya. That is great. Thanks. You are having some appreciation from Mohammed Egg. Mohammed Ege is also somebody who is much experienced in matters of East Africa, coming from Somalia. He understands most of these regions, and he really traveled well within the Eastern Africa and understands people's culture and how people move across the African continent. So, Mohammed, I'm coming to look for you in May. I'll be in Somaliland, so I'll ensure I get in touch. Good year. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate your contribution on the comment section. Sharon, of course, I saw you. Thank you so much, and always feel welcomed. Ojala, karibu sana. I sent some greetings, I think, from Kosoko. Greetings from Ojala. Alaban Misiani, karibu sana. We had Shadrach Matoke, Betty, Sielilu, Richard Riley, Esther Batia, Mary Masiuko, Caleb Ndolo, and associates. So, guys, we really appreciate, and whenever we get time, we'll ensure that we bring Mr. Kennedy Abuya so that he can be able to enlighten us. I can see, Kennedy, people are interested in matters Eastern Africa. You can see Habil is bringing the issues of Kagame, issues of how East Africa is really integrating. So when you get time next time, I will invite you so that we can be able to look at the East African region, how we live, how we do business, and some of the things that can be done to ensure that we live as a community. And under your permission, if you get time, I'd request even an hour so that you can come, and people are really eager to learn more. You know, whenever we bring somebody like you who is experienced, you've already known how things are happening outside here, you can be able to tell us so that we can also be able to know how things happen outside there, because these ones are also changing our perception, and they're also informing the information, informing the decisions that we make as a country. And through that, we believe that we are going to have Kenya as a country that we would all want to live in. So with all those hours of talking, I just want to say thank you and wish you well. As you know, in Africa, we try to connect you with African stories. Like today, we've just connected with Abuya, who is joining us from Kigali, Rwanda. So till next time, I want to wish you a good evening, good morning for the ones who are waking up from wherever you are, and ensure you subscribe to Afrique 24-hour TV if you've not done so. Share with your friends so that whenever we are live, you get notified. From this end, I want to say bye-bye and thank you for viewing this.